Our next teller is Laurie Reaume. Laurie tells me that she tells stories that are 94% true. They are of wondrous and whimsical interactions, childhood memories, and unusual encounters with nature. Since 2013, Laurie has told more than 35 personal stories at the Swap in Santa Rosa and beyond. Please welcome Laurie to the stage.
Home. When I think of the word home with a capital H, I immediately conjure the house where I grew up in Brookfield, Wisconsin, a suburb of Milwaukee, with my 4 siblings, my parents, and all the years we had there. It was a new suburb, a brand new house, little trees, everybody was new, lots of young families moved in there. It was a 4-bedroom ranch-style, 1-story house. We lived on a corner, and after I grew up and I was away at college, my parents sold the house and moved to the East Coast. Well, my other siblings did the same. They scattered all over the country. We were in 6 different states among us. So I didn't have much occasion to go back to Brookfield. But on a business trip, about 20 years later, I made plans to have a 1-day layover because I wanted to visit a few friends from high school and college, and also to visit my dear piano teacher. Of course, I wanted to go by my house to see how it had changed. So as I drove up, I was really surprised. It looked like it had shrunk. The trees that were so little when we were there were now huge and towering and shading the house. And the house just looked so much smaller. And the whole neighborhood was that way. It was very lovely, full of trees. And so I went and looked, and I was really surprised. The house looked really lonely. There was no evidence of children or activity. We used to have swing set and toys and bikes all over the place. So I didn't have a lot of time before I went back to the airport, so I made my way over a few blocks over to visit my piano teacher. And about an hour or so later, I thought, I'm just going to go by one more time, take a picture for old time's sake, and make my way out. Well, upon my approach to my house, I was amazed that there was a moving van in the driveway unloading. And it turned out that the brand new owners were just moving in that same day. And so I didn't want to bother them, but I couldn't resist just approaching. And I said, excuse me, I know you're really busy, but I grew up in this house, and before I could finish, come on in, you have some explaining to do.
Explain.
Okay, I hope I can answer your questions. So we went down the hall where all the bedrooms were, and they showed me this clothes chute that my dad had installed. It was kind of like when you go to mail a letter and you pull it forward. They hadn't seen one before, and I grew up with that, so it was just common sense and matter of fact to me that it was there, but it was new to them, and they would drop all of our clothes directly into the bins right across from the washer and dryer. And then we walked around, and it was so neat. Really, the structure of the house is the same as I remembered. There's still the copper poles on the kitchen cabinets, and I remember the bedrooms, and just the way it was set up was really sweet. And we went to the basement, and I could see people had repainted a little bit, but it was basically the way it was. My dad had finished the basement, and there was a fruit cellar where we put my mom's beautifully canned fruits and vegetables from the summer heat that we'd eat all winter, and my dad's workshop and a couple offices. So we were walking around, and they had another question for me. They said, what is that thing? And it was a rectangular thing in kind of the 1960s aqua color that was so popular for appliances. And it was on wheels. And I said, oh, that's a dehumidifier. That's the very dehumidifier that was my chore to empty at least once a day in the very hot, humid Midwest summers, because we would go down to the basement to try to stay cool, no air conditioning. So that was that. And then we were walking around, and I needed to get going, and I didn't want to keep them longer from unloading. So I made one last look around and did a double take right outside the fruit cellar on the little door panel going into it. There was our original height chart in pencil. All the siblings' names and half the neighborhood kids. It was all still there. And this was 2 owners later, and 20 years after we moved, nobody had painted over it. I was so touched. And then they were interested too because they just saw those names. But they said, "Who's this one?" And boy, Michael grew this a lot that year. Michael was my younger brother by just a little bit, and he was always trying to get taller than me. So at the point where he finally got a little taller, then he says, "Now you have to call me your little big brother." So all these family memories came back just looking at all those names and how tall we were in different ages. So I was just amazed at the sweet serendipity of going there on the same day and the same hour that they were moving in. And I haven't been back since. It was just a one thing. And the fact I got to see the house vacant because I could superimpose my own memories and furnishings and not feel like I was invading somebody else's space or having them do it wrong. And it was just amazing. It was so sweet. And so I think it really is true that you can go home again.